To Each a Tempo, an Ace Attorney and Elite Beat Agents fanfiction. Chapter 14. Cherry stalked in like a particularly disgruntled force of nature, still wearing her red-trimmed chef uniform and giving everything and everyone a ferocious glare. She gripped the witness stand, and Phoenix could nearly hear her teeth grind.
If she wants to testify, she could at least look a little happier about it.
Witness, your name and
You paper shufflers have a hell of a lot of nerve. Do you have any idea how pickle-packin' hard it is working a lunch rush?
Edgeworth's eye twitched.
I assure you, this will be over as quickly as possible. Now, your name and occupation?
Creme fraiche on buckwheat blini calling me in here at this hour when I've got lunch prep to do. I've got half an hour tops before the frickin' hordes trample the place, and my apprentice with it. Poor cheese for brains.
Edgeworth tightened a fist against his stand.
Ms. LaFlamme.
How many times do I have to tell you it's Chef?
She straightened, tucking a scruffy braid back under her cap.
Chef Cherry LaFlamme, owner and head chef of the Orchard Bistro.
She eyed the courtroom as though anyone would disagree.
Chef LaFlamme's business is situated across the street from Foster Park, with a clear view of the forest's edge and anyone fleeing from it. She was present in the restaurant on the day of the murder.
Lunch sounds good. Very well, Mr. LaFlamme.
Chef, Abacus helped me get it right.
The judge blinked, wide-eyed.
Yes, of course. Chef LaFlamme. This court won't keep you longer than necessary, so please give your testimony on the events of Tuesday morning.
Right.
Cherry settled from boiling to simmering. This was it. Any one of Cherry's sharp words could be something to turn against her, and any hesitation a sign of weakness. Phoenix settled his palms on the stand, braced. Then he noticed the white hum of static, mild in his ear where comlink silence ought to be.
I spent the morning doing prep for service.
Hold it!
Phoenix leaned forward, poking the communicator node as casually as his panic, clumsy hand could manage.
Could you be more specific?
If he had forgotten what it was like to be skewered by Cherry's glare, he's certainly remembered now.
What's your face, right? Potato fork and nosy little.
Chef LaFlamme, the defense has a point. What do you mean by prep?
Basic prep for service. Of all the egg coddling, I was cutting vegetables, filling the sauces, searing more filet. I was in the kitchen working with food. Do you need it more simpler than that?
No.
Interference. Sorry, Phoenix.
Maybe they needed more metatreble resistors. Cherry was glaring equally between both sides of the court now.
I cooked for the lunch rush, and you better believe it was busy. Stuck in the kitchen all fritter flippin' morning and half the afternoon. My assistant did the serving. And I went to the downstairs fridges for supplies once. That was when I saw him.
That's not what she told us.
True, Cherry's testimony was full of contradictions already. But where was she going with it? Phoenix waited.
Just a peek at the guy out the window, but he was muttering about offing someone. Good thing the cops showed up. I don't put up with any frickin' capers on my property.
Phoenix tapped his chin.
You say you saw who out the window?
The guy.
Cherry flailed an arm in Stewart's general direction.
Him.
Perhaps a floor map of Miss LaFlamme's restaurant might help?
Edgeworth gestured to the bailiffs, prompting another round of handouts.
Chef for jus sauce roast crying out loud.
Phoenix received a map. The simple lines of walls and doorways matched his memory of the orchard layout, and brought pots and yellowed plaster to mind, as well as an old, greasy little window.
This is the widow you're talking about? On the west wall by the stairwell?
Yeah, you saw it when you were in there making a nuisance of yourself, didn't you, Wright?
Cherry's smirk was no improvement over her grimace.
Did you try that window to see if it opens?
By this point, Phoenix didn't know if he was asking Foxx or Maya, and he didn't care who answered. The hinges had looked done like dinner, but looks could be deceiving.
I didn't. I don't think I did.
I can have an agent there ASAP to check.
Don't worry, Foxx.
Phoenix settled his palms on the stand.
I think I can do this another way.
Yeah, there's more than one way to skin it.
Anybody who worked for me and yapped this much would get a size 10 steel toe right in the frickin' cornhole.
Cornhole? I always used to play at the county fair. It's delightful.
I believe she's referring to a different sort of cornhole, Your Honor.
Phoenix hurried to change the subject, because this was an all-new plane of not needing to know.
If we could get back to the point. Chef LaFlamme, you say you were in the kitchen for the entire lunch service, except for one trip downstairs.
Yeah, you got a beef with that?
I do.
And Phoenix pointed.
Because it contradicts what your assistant told me.
What?
Cherry's hands were like hard claws on the stand's wood.
You think he has a thing to do with this?
Your assistant said that you served the customers. More specifically, he said that you served customers during that lunch service. And here's the proof.
Phoenix slapped the customer serving side rag on top of the defense stand. This is one of your side rags, Chef LaFlamme.
Side towel, clove, peeling, hell, you'd give Emerald a headache.
Whatever they're called, they're important to a chef. You're even carrying them now.
Cherry's hands flew to her apron strings, full of towels and tongs. Her eyes narrowed.
According to your assistant, you change towels regularly, without fail. This towel is from Tuesday morning, and it has multiple coffee stains on it. Why would that be if you weren't serving customers?
Chef LaFlamme, perjury is a serious offense.
She waved a hand.
So I messed up the details a bit. Here, I'll go over it again if it's such honey glazing big deal.
Please do.
Fine. I made the food and served the customers. I do it all the time. It's not like servers around here know their glasses from their elbows. Haven't seen a lunch service that busy in months, and with Dempster backing me up, I manage.
The judge blinked.
Dempster?
Her assistant, Your Honor.
Edgeworth turned his cool gaze to Cherry.
If you could get to the point, Miss LaFlamme, what you saw.
Most of Cherry's reply was ground to powder between her teeth. It had something to do with Edgeworth's IQ and with an unpleasant use for salami.
They really don't get along, do they?
Edgeworth and Cherry certainly didn't like each other, but Phoenix wondered, hadn't Edgeworth dealt with worse and remembered pickier details than a chef's title?
What I frickin' saw was Blondie over there running like heck.
Lazily lifting a sheet, Edgeworth glanced sideways to Cherry.
I don't see how that relates to what you heard in the alleyway.
Heard? I didn't hear anything.
Cherry shook her head suddenly.
Everybody shut your pie holes for a sec. Do you want to hear this or not?
Cherry contradicting herself, the faint smirk stirring on Edgeworth.
He wants to know what she's hiding as well.
That had to be it. The more Cherry stumbled, the more she was needled and hounded, the more truth she would spill.
If he's setting you up for a shot, then take it.
Phoenix couldn't agree more.
Look, I saw the guy running out of the forest. He came through the trees, crossed the road into my alleyway. It had to be him.
Hold it! If you were so busy, why did you notice that?
Why? What?
Phoenix rubbed his chin.
You were cooking and waiting tables during a lunch rush, mostly by yourself. That sounds like a lot to look after. Why would you stop and watch out the window?
I was wiping down the far window table and I just happened to look up and see him. Look on his face like the world was ending. I don't know why I looked, I just did, and if you've got a cheese-grating problem with that, Wright.
I believe the issue here isn't why Miss LaFlamme happened to see the defendant, but what she did see.
I agree. Why don't you begin your testimony again, Chef LaFlamme? And maybe there won't be so many interruptions this time.
I think he's talking to you, Nick.
For once, the witness stand hysterics weren't Phoenix's fault. Mostly. But Cherry was only tightening, only glaring harder. The right moment drew close.
The table.
With a shake of her head, Cherry tried again.
The guy running, he was running out of the trees, and I looked up again, and he was half across the street, wearing dark clothes. I didn't notice anything else.
Hold it! You only noticed dark clothing? How do you know if it was the defendant then?
I just do, right? Perch, poochin'.
Objection!
Phoenix started and met Edgeworth's gaze across the court. He remembered the court and their sparring matches, and everything but Cherry's cracking armor.
Mr. Wright, if you'll recall, the defendant was wearing a black suit at the time of his arrest and was running from Foster Park. Miss LaFlamme's testimony matches him exactly.
Objection! She didn't say a dark suit, she said dark clothing. That could be anyone.
Objection! Mr. Lowe was the only dark-clothed individual cited running at that time.
Objection! With the testimony that vague, she could have just guessed.
Confection. I am not here to be called a freaking liar.
Enough! The individual Chef LaFlamme saw sounds somewhat like the defendant, but I wouldn't call that account decisive. Do you see anything else relevant about her testimony, Mr. Wright?
If Cherry saw someone running, specifically leaving the forest...
She hasn't been told about the murder scene, has she? Mr. Edgeworth wouldn't tell her about it if he didn't have to.
Oh, good point. The murderer's exact flight path hasn't been mentioned yet.
And if Cherry knew that the killer left Foster Park through the forest...
There is something relevant, Your Honor.
Phoenix turned back to the witness stand. This was what they needed. Cherry cornered and flustered, and shaking too hard to hold a lie together. Phoenix could nearly hear the Magatama's tune, nearly see Cherry's red-hot frustration, and hear her chains.
Chef LaFlamme, you say you saw Morna Beasley's killer leaving the scene of the crime through the park's trees.
Yeah, like those apples, right?
Did this person follow any kind of path or walkway?
No, straight through the bushes and muddy junk.
That does match the footprints found at the scene of the crime, as well as the dirt traces found in the defendant's shoes.
So Cherry's story was equal parts lies and telling truth. There was only one possible reason for it.
So, you know how the killer left the scene of the crime. Tell me this, Chef LaFlamme. Did you know the victim, Miss Beasley?
Cherry stopped suddenly, sudden realization flashing across her face like ice water.
Old lady, wasn't she?
Yes, and she was part of a bridge club.
Phoenix put hands to his hips.
Maybe you're familiar with the ladies' bridge club.
So what, that bunch of crotchety old biddies?
An instant of silence fell stony over the court. Cherry shook her head hard, and the red spiking aura grew around her.
I mean, I served him a couple times before, so bacon board and help me if I don't need the money that bad. You try pandering to every picky, tea-swilling old boar that comes in. Offer 'em pheasant, they'd rather have grouse.
Jane's tapping. He says, rhythms off, not like normal. LaFlamme is terrified, Phoenix.
And he believed it. Cherry feared for her restaurant, loved it and fought for it, suffered every day, and wanted someone else to take the fall.
It sounds to me like you know the bridge club, and you don't like them.
He was so close now. All he needed to do was nudge.
How could I? You don't get it. There have to be lines. If I didn't take a friggin' stand, then crows like them just...
Take a stand? Why would you do that?
I had to. Damn it, right. Caramel-coated Roshan Boosh, they talk about the place like it's any greasy dive. You should hear the rumors those crones spread about, but they keep stock stewing coming back. What's a respectable chef supposed to do?
You turned away one of the bridge club ladies on the morning of the murder. You told me so yourself. Miss Beasley was one of those ladies, and you recognized her by name. With a grudge like that...
Phoenix pointed at her, called it out fierce.
You're Morna Beasley's killer.
Cherry screeched, and the sound of a snapping rubber band rang through the court. One braid came unraveled, and her hand flew to her stung eye.
Chicken plucker!
And the gallery's roar swallowed everything, the judge hammering distant. Phoenix looked across to Edgeworth, whose gaze was thoughtful, unreadable.
Order! Order in the court!
Quiet trickled back in, and the judge set his gavel down.
This is a grave accusation, but it definitely has merit.
You're better, your stinking wiener schnitzel.
Cherry quickly began replaiting her braid. The judge blinked.
Chef LaFlamme, please watch your language. And Mr. Edgeworth, your thoughts on this?
Too slightly to see, Phoenix only knew that it happened. Edgeworth straightened.
There is a motive at work here. The prosecution acknowledges this.
Hey!
Yanking an elastic from around her wrist, Cherry secured her braid and returned to her stand-gripping bristle.
The hell's this?
Mr. Wright, do elaborate on your theory. I suppose Miss LaFlamme knew the murderer's exact path through the woods because she was the one taking that path.
She wears big shoes, too.
Large for a woman.
Perfect. He had nearly forgotten.
She did leave through the trees. And didn't Chef LaFlamme mention her size 10 shoes earlier?
Along with the charming things she'd do with them. Edgeworth looked to Cherry.
The witness's footwear could be analyzed for soil traces and for exact size match.
What?
Cherry huffed and looked between them, wide-eyed.
No!
And if the murder weapon was an item the murderer carried...
Phoenix looked to Cherry's hip, to her chef's full apron strings, and knew that answer.
If I may direct the court's attention to Chef LaFlamme's metal tongs hanging from her apron. She carries those the same way she carries side towels. Look at the base of those tongs. They're not hinge-styled, they're curved like a hairpin. The bend that is the size and shape of a missing murder weapon.
Her hand brushed against her twin pairs of tongs. They flashed menacingly.
Cheesecake.
Phoenix patted the bagged towel once before producing the lab report on it.
What's more is that Chef LaFlamme's side towel from Tuesday morning has green soy-based ink. More than a trace. In fact, there was enough to smear. That's more than enough to leave a trace on Miss Beasley's sweater.
How can you?
Cherry clutched her head, shook it, and growled.
All this Edgeworth? Who the hell's side are you on?
Chef LaFlamme, I seek only the truth.
If you think you have any idea what the truth is, baloney, all of it. You don't even know.
Cherry!
That voice was familiar, but stronger, echoing off the ceilings. Volumes flashed through Cherry's eyes as she looked to the gallery.
Dempster? Just who's watching the orchard?
There was Barley, leaning over the balcony, hat crushed in his hand and determination trembling on his face.
I locked up. It doesn't matter. You can't do this anymore. Can't you see yourself? Can't you hear it? I do every day, and you're not the person I won't let you. Tell the truth, Cherry.
It was quiet, while Cherry's throat worked, and her knuckles went white and her face twisted. Hurt to rage and back again.
No. God damn it, I can't.
Her voice cracked. And then Cherry LaFlamme bolted from the courtroom.
Tweech a Tempo was written by Pyrasaur. Ace Attorney and Elite Beat Agents are owned by Capcom and Inis, respectively. The narrator for this story is Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Phoenix Wright is Lastni. The voice of Maya Fey is Miki. The voice of Miles Edgeworth is Lazy Ace Dia. The voice of the judge is Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Agent Foxx is Galen Skibyak. The voice of Cherry LaFlamme is Katie Hiatt. The voice of Barley Dempster is Ronson Harrington. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.